Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you may be in this world. I am Walt Bishke. I am the Associate Director of Graduate Admissions at Vanderbilt University. And this is our information session for incoming students, building smart money habits. We're delighted that you could join us today, and we're excited about the wisdom that we have to share with you, and hope to engage you in some discussion and good commentary back and forth. We're going to go ahead and get started, and the recording of this session will be available after the session on the graduate school website, which you will receive information after the session about how to access that. And we have all of our incoming student information sessions that have been video recorded, linked on our graduate school website for your reference. And we are here to answer your questions and give you a better understanding of student life and the student experience here at Vanderbilt. And even if you have a question that may not be along the lines of the specific topic of this session, we're here to serve you. So please feel free to put your question in the chat or raise your hand, and we will do our best to answer you. So, building smart money habits. This session, we want to give you some frameworks to analyze your current spending and saving habits and your challenges and opportunities in your financial decisions. We want to show you how to apply some simple budgeting strategies. We want to show you how to understand the SMART framework for developing good financial goals and plans of action. And we want you to understand more about debt and how to manage it. But before we jump into that, let's talk about what is financial well-being. We are defining financial well-being as a state of being wherein a person can fully meet current and ongoing financial obligations, and they can feel secure in their financial future and make choices that allow enjoyment of life. This diagram shows the four elements of financial well-being and how to balance security and freedom of choice with your present and future financial needs. So, for example, having security in the present means having control over your day-to-day and month-to-month finances. Having security in the future means you have the capacity to absorb a financial shock and not be thrown into a crisis because you have that emergency fund or you have that contingency plan. And we're going to talk about those things. Having freedom of choice in the present means financial freedom to make choices to enjoy your life. You have the resources to do the things you want to do. Freedom of choice in the future means that you are going to remain on track to meet your long-term financial goals. This diagram shows how your financial decisions are influenced by your personal values and your personal identity. What lifestyle do you want for yourself? When you think about your values, do they include living alone, having nice clothes, maybe downtown life, maybe comparing your situation with that of your friends? In terms of identity, we're talking about where you came from and the standard of living that you've had up to now and what you expect to have going forward. And how do your current financial resources support the lifestyle that you want? So that leads us to our talk about budgeting. What is a budget? It's a tool that can help you manage your monthly and day-to-day spending, with the goal being to make sure that your expenses don't exceed your income so that you end up in debt. Let's define some terms in the areas of income and expenses. So your total income, looking at gross versus net, and the gross income is the income that you have before taxes, and your net income is what you actually keep after taxes. And let me just say, some of you may already have budgets. Some of you may be completely new to the area of having budgets. Maybe you don't even have your first checking account yet. I think most people probably have had some simple budgeting plan to this point in their life. But if not, it's always good to understand new ideas and get back to the basics sometimes, especially if you need to retool and rethink how your financial situation is going. So back to our discussion of terms. So we've talked about gross income versus net income, discretionary income. This would be any income that you would have left over after all of your monthly expenses are paid. Another description would be that discretionary income is your fun money to do the extra things that you want to do, like eating out and going to the movies, or maybe buying a new watch. Expenses come in two basic varieties. They're fixed expenses and variable expenses. So your fixed expenses are the expense amounts that will be the same from month to month, like your rent. Variable expenses are the expense amounts that can change from month to month, like groceries or gasoline or a concert ticket. So what are some of the benefits of using a budget? Here's a few to consider. Understanding your living expenses. Where does most of your money go? What are your largest and smallest expenses? Paying off student loans. If you're paying off a large debt, you'll need to plan in order to do it in regular monthly payments. Planning for retirement. You may think retirement is a long way off, but it's never too early to start saving up money. Establish an emergency fund. Have cash on hand for unforeseen expenses that could exceed your monthly income. We'll talk more about setting up an emergency fund later in this presentation. Pay your bills on time, every time. Being mindful about your spending will reduce the risk that you overspend on the fun items before the bills are due. And you'll also do smart things like setting up auto pay so that you don't have to remember what days of the month things are due. You can set that up so that there's an automatic bank draft each month for credit card payments, utility bills, things of that nature. It's always a good idea. Establish and track credit. A good credit history and credit score will be important when you want to buy a house or a car, for example. A budget can also help you live within your means. This means that you don't spend more than the income you receive. It means don't use credit cards as an emergency fund because debt can snowball fast with interest. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. Be a social deal seeker. What does that mean? It means think about the value of things and compare prices. Where can you find the goods and services you want at a reasonable price? This can take some effort on your part to seek out, but the money you'll save will be worth it. For example, word of mouth can help you find a good, honest car mechanic, somebody who doesn't overcharge their customers and does good work. You don't want to pay more than you have to for things, and sometimes you have to look for those bargains that can help you stay within your budget. Here is an example of a simple monthly budget spreadsheet. So you have your income here in this box, and you have your expenses down here, and you'll be able to compare your amount of income that you're bringing in and be able to project the expenses, the fixed and variable expenses that you'll have, and make sure that you always stay in the black so that you always have more money than you have the expenses. There's a lot of great budget tools just in Microsoft Word templates. There's so many different software programs out there and apps that you can have on your phone that will help you calculate these things with some simple inputs. We'll talk more about some of the apps that are helpful, and even an app that's available for all incoming graduate school students at Vanderbilt. But this just gives you a simple, concrete idea of what can this look like on paper, tracking the amount of income that you expect to receive each month and anticipating the fixed and variable expenses that you'll have, and just making sure that you have enough cash on hand to cover that. A budget can help you understand where does your money go. So what did you spend? You spent your money on what? On groceries, on eating out, on Uber rides, on clothes shopping. It can also help you identify your needs versus your wants. Do you need to buy that new jacket, or do you just want it because it's a more current style than your old jacket? One-time expenses are another thing to consider, such as annual dues for some organization you may belong to, or a new software license, or maybe your car registration comes due. We'll talk coming up about setting up an annual calendar of financial events where you can sort of plan these out and know where these different expenses are going to come up during the year, and you'll be able to plan ahead and maybe even save up a little bit each month so that you don't have as big of a out-of-pocket expense on the month that the event actually occurs. The budget will help you understand your patterns of spending. How much money do you spend on eating out each month? Is that your biggest discretionary expense? Or is it maybe going to the movies? Or is it maybe clothes shopping? These are all good things to be aware of. The 50-20-30 rule is a helpful framework for thinking about how to allocate your income across your various expenses in a month. So as you can see, this simple model, we're going to put 50% of our monthly income towards essential expenses such as housing, transportation, groceries. We're going to have 30% of our income monthly go to our lifestyle choices, or the fun things we want to do, or the things that we deem are necessary for a good life, like having a cell phone, having money for entertainment, going out to eat, spending time with friends. And then again, 20% for savings. Build your savings and give yourself some extra funds to pay off any debt that you might be carrying even now. You'll need to plan ahead in order to make sure that you have the money to go to all of these different areas. Here's another helpful framework for thinking about how to allocate your income across your various expenses in a month. And so there's no one way, no one right way to budget. It's really just about you understanding what your pool of resources is, your income, thinking about your values and where your discretionary income is going to go after you've paid the things that you have to pay, like your rent, your groceries, and things of that nature. So different ways to consider dividing up that pie of monthly cash that you get. Still, another helpful framework for setting financial goals is the SMART goals method. SMART, as you can see, is an acronym. The S stands for specific. What specific goal is it that what is the thing that you want to do that requires money? M for measurable. How will you know when you've reached your goal? What will the measure be that you've reached your goal? Achievable. Is it in your power to accomplish it? R, realistic. Can you realistically achieve this? And T, timely. When exactly do you want to accomplish this goal? A timeline framework. So let's say you want to save up $500 to take a road trip with your friends over spring break. We can apply the SMART goals framework as follows. So when we look at the S for specific, what do you want to do? I want to save $500 for a spring break road trip to Chattanooga with my friends. Measurable. How will you know when you've reached your goal? When I have $500 saved in my spring break fund. Achievable. Is it in your power to accomplish it? Yes. If I plan ahead and save a little at a time, start now, maybe $125 a month over 4 months, or starting in, let's say, December, by March, you'll have the $500. Realistic. Can you realistically achieve this? Yes, but I'll have to make choices about spending in other areas, like eating out or concerts each month. Maybe it would be more realistic for you to start saving in November and spread the cost over 5 months at $100 each month, instead of starting in December and having to save larger amounts each month to get to that goal. Timely. When exactly do you want to accomplish this? I want to have the $500 saved by spring break week in March. So that's a simple example of how you can apply the SMART goals framework to plan for a financial goal. Here are some budgeting apps that are recommended by the people who use them. So we just wanted to give you a list of products to consider. There are many out there, and some of you may already have apps like these on your phone, but Mint is one budgeting app that is recommended. Good Budget is another app for hands-on envelope budgeting. And for those of you who are not familiar with the concept of envelope budgeting, that is the idea of setting aside an envelope for each expense or each amount of money that you're going to spend on certain items each month. Like maybe you're planning to spend $75 on gasoline that goes in the envelope. Maybe you're planning to spend $350 on groceries. That amount goes in an envelope. And the idea is that you only spend you spend no more than what you have put in your envelope and set aside for that item. So that's one strategy for keeping yourself on budget. YNAB stands for You Need a Budget. That's a hands-on zero-based budgeting app. Every Dollar for simpler zero-based budgeting. Personal Capital for tracking wealth and spending. Pocket Guard for a simplified budgeting snapshot. Honeydew for budgeting with a partner. And Fudget for budgeting without syncing accounts. I mentioned earlier that there is an app that Vanderbilt has made available to their students, and this is the Grad Ready budgeting app. Vanderbilt provides this as an optional free tool, and it includes information for managing tuition, budgets, and bills. And when you click on the link or go to the vanderbilt.gradready.com site, you'll need to create an account. You will always maintain access to this tool as a student and even after you leave Vanderbilt. So it's a tool that you can continue to use if it's helpful for you. It's designed to help you understand your financial aid and manage your finances. Let's talk about debt. So in simple terms, what is debt? Debt is something, usually money, owed by one party to another. Here are some reasons why debt is bad for you, and you should take steps to avoid going into debt. And again, I know some of this may be new information. Some of this may not be new information, but we're just trying to lay a good, solid foundation. Debt encourages you to spend more than you can afford. Credit cards are the thing that really allow this, and taking out lines of credit. Debt costs money. Credit card debt often carries a high interest rate, which makes the total amount grow before you can pay it off. Debt borrows from your future income. What does that mean? You could become weighed down with monthly credit card bills, payments that limit your remaining monthly cash flow. High interest debt causes you to pay more than the item costs. And again, this is when you accrue a balance on your credit card. Most people don't get in trouble just putting a single transaction on their credit card and then paying it off. The pitfall is when you put a bunch of transactions on that card and you're not able to pay it off at the end of the month. Well, that balance that keeps carrying forward is going to keep snowballing and growing interest, and you're going to end up paying a lot more for that item than the amount that you paid at the store, because you'll be paying the credit card company interest on that debt. High interest debt causes you to pay more than the item costs. Debt keeps you from reaching your financial goals. You'll become limited in what you can spend on the things that you want to do right now. Debt can keep you from owning a home. Again, this might be a little bit down the road for many of you, but someday you'll be wanting to buy a house. Many of you probably already have a car. Some of you have taken out loans and making payments on those cars, but a low credit score can be a barrier to securing a loan. So that is another thing to keep in mind. Debt can lead to stress and serious medical problems. There's no anxiety quite like financial anxiety and the inability to make ends meet. So we want to avoid allowing ourselves to slip into that situation. Debt can hurt your marriage. There's a lot of studies that show that couples and partners, one of the number one topics of argument between couples is money, financial issues. Debt hurts your credit score. We've already talked about that. Let's talk about tips for managing debt or avoiding it in the first place, even better. Gather your data. You want to organize your statements and bills with a good filing system. Have everything together so that you can look at everything. Make a financial inventory. Understand where the money is going each month. That's what your budget's going to help you do. Lower your interest rates. You can either negotiate with your current credit card company or transfer the balance of one credit card to a lower interest credit card to help pay it off faster. Pay more than the minimum. Paying the minimum payment of a credit card bill doesn't help you to get ahead of the interest that accrues on the balance. And that's how the credit card companies get you in the long run. Increase your income. Can you do side gigs? Can you offer tutoring services or drive for DoorDash or Uber? What other side gigs might you be able to do to bring in some extra cash to help your cash flow? Cut unnecessary spending. Where are you spending a lot of money? Your budget will show you this. Is the most money that you spend each month from eating out? Maybe you eat out at some cheaper places or one or two fewer times each month. Maybe you cook at home maybe 3 nights a week instead of going out 3 or 4 nights a week. Clothing. Maybe consider getting some of your clothes from the thrift store versus buying the newest and best items at full price. Create a new budget. If your current plan isn't working, start a new plan. You can always go back to the drawing board. Create an emergency fund. The idea of an emergency fund is you want to be able to handle an emergency car repair or a plane ticket. Like if there's a family emergency and you have to go travel somewhere on sudden notice, without creating a cash flow crisis for your other bills and expenses during the month. Simply having a reserve for these unforeseen expenses is what is the idea behind an emergency fund. Rent negotiation. You can ask your landlord if the rent price is open to discussion. You may be surprised at a landlord's willingness to consider discounts for being a good tenant. You can highlight your strengths as a tenant, such as paying your rent on time or taking good care of the property, living in harmony with other tenants. Maybe you even organize community events with neighbors, get everyone together for a cookout or movie or bowling night or something like that. These are all characteristic of someone who would be considered a good tenant. You can inquire about extending the lease, having a longer leasing term than say 6 months, maybe make it 12 months or 15 months. Why is this good? Some landlords will trade a lower rent for a longer commitment, especially if you're a good tenant. Also, you can offer to the landlord to end the lease in the summer. And the reason this would be attractive to a landlord is that this is a prime time for landlords to find new tenants. Lots of people are looking for places at this time. It's a time when school sessions are ending and some tenants are graduating and leaving, moving out, leaving vacancies that maybe other new students or other tenants will be looking for places. So if you offer to free up the apartment at the time when the landlord is going to have the most people looking for it, they'll appreciate that, and they may appreciate that with giving you lower rent. Research the property's value. And this is an example of being a deal seeker. So is there another apartment with similar amenities that's being offered at a lower rent somewhere else in town? You could use this as leverage in your discussion with your landlord about lowering the rent at your place. Be open to compromise. Any agreement or negotiation should be win-win. It should be a good deal for both parties. Negotiate directly and follow up in writing. You may have a discussion and a handshake with your landlord, but make sure you write it in an email or a letter that is acknowledged after the fact. Have a backup plan. What will you do if the landlord won't negotiate? And maybe you will need to find another place that better fits your budget. You need to think a few steps ahead to the downstream possibilities. What are some steps you should take if you find yourself in debt? Well, first, draft a plan. You didn't get in here into the situation overnight, and you won't get out overnight. So you'll need to plan out your steps for what is the next right thing to do. The things that we've already discussed, such as looking at your expenses, understanding where your understanding and tracking your expense patterns, understanding your habits, and maybe what got you in the hole, and setting some new financial goals. Again, maybe looking for places where you can cut unnecessary expenses, maybe eat out 1 or 2 nights less a week, shop at the thrift store versus buying new, shop at Aldi versus Trader Joe's or some of the more upscale places to get groceries. Be a deal seeker. Categorize your spending and saving. You have to be intentional, and you have to have a plan. Identify future spending. We mentioned earlier the idea of having a 12-month calendar and just writing in the expenses that you expect to have through the year so that you can plan ahead and save up each month for those things. Maybe, again, that's a plane ticket for a summer trip or an annual renewal fees for your car registration, a birthday dinner for a friend. These are all things that you can put on the calendar and know when they're coming up, and they won't be a surprise that will hit you and strain your cash flow for the month that it happens, because you can plan ahead. We want you to also be aware of a student resource for you here at Vanderbilt, the Center for Student Wellbeing. The mission of the Center for Student Wellbeing is to create a culture that supports the personal development and academic success of students using an integrative, holistic framework. And some of the benefits offered through the Center for Student Wellbeing include well-being, academic and peer coaching, one-on-one, recovery support services, meditation and yoga workshops, student-led initiatives, substance use screenings, awareness and prevention programming, and other skill-building workshops. And it's with our partners in the Center for Student Wellbeing that we're presenting this talk about building smart money habits today. So there are people there that will be glad to consult with you and help you think through your budget models and any of these other topics that we have mentioned. Thank you all for joining us today. At this time, I want to open it up to any questions that you might have. And please feel free to take a screenshot of this slide and know that we are available to answer any questions that you might have moving forward, either about financial well-being topics or other questions you have about the Vanderbilt student experience. So at this time, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and open it up for any questions that you might have. Sergio. Oh, I see you're giving clapping hands. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for today.
You're most welcome. Does anyone have any experience with managing their own personal budget at this stage in your lives? Did any of this resonate? Was any of this new or helpful? Well, we hope so. If there are no other questions, I will thank you again for joining us today. And I will remind you that this session recording will be available on the graduate school website in the admitted students information section. So you can come back to it as a reference. And again, let me congratulate all of you on your academic records and your admission to Vanderbilt University from a very competitive pool. We certainly hope that these information sessions give you more valuable information that you can use in your decision-making process. And we hope that you will choose Vanderbilt as the best fit for your graduate education and your overall career goals. Thank you again for joining us, and we will look forward to seeing you in the next sessions.